Our top focus at this hour, the United States plans to deploy some 3,000 additional troops to fortify NATO forces in Eastern Europe. This comes amid fears that Russia could invade Ukraine. About 1,000 US troops stationed in Germany will be moved eastward towards Romania. 2,000 more will be deployed to Poland and Germany from the United States, reportedly from the Fort Bragg military base in North Carolina. Listen in.
The United States stands shoulder to shoulder with our NATO allies. The current situation demands that we reinforce the deterrent and defensive posture on NATO's eastern flank. President Biden has been clear that the United States will respond to the growing threat to Europe's security and stability. Our commitment to NATO, Article 5, and collective defense remains ironclad. As part of this commitment, and to be prepared for a range of contingencies, the United States will soon move additional forces to Romania, Poland, and Germany. I want to be very clear about something. These are not permanent moves.
The Pentagon has made a few things pretty clear. Firstly, these forces will not fight in Ukraine. Secondly, these are not permanent moves. They are just responding to the current conditions. Both Romania and Poland border Ukraine, and the move has been viewed as a repositioning of certain Europe-based units. These deployments are above and beyond the 8,500 troops that the Pentagon put on alert last month. Together, the moves aim to reassure jittery NATO allies, especially in the face of a Russian military buildup near Ukraine. U.S. troops include additional brigade combat teams, logisticals personnel, medical support, aviation support, and forces involved with intelligence and surveillance. Meanwhile, with the threat of war looming large, and turn to the negotiating table to address its concerns. Listen in.
I want to reiterate, Ukraine calls on Russia to withdraw the troops it amassed near our border, bring them back to their bases, stop intimidating Ukraine and the wider Euro-Atlantic community, and address all issues at the negotiating table only. Here, I would like to specifically stress that Ukraine and our partners, including the United States, have no difference in assessing risks of current Russian escalation. The tone of voice of our messages may sound different, but the actual assessment is the same. Everything is possible, and we should be preparing for every possible scenario.
For India's help to deal with Russia when it comes to this conflict and the de-escalation. Listen in.
Ukraine is a friend and a partner of India, and India will find any attempt of Russia to solve the current crisis by military means or to continue destabilizing Ukraine from inside unacceptable. If Russia hears that from Indian government, that would be a very strong message of support, and it will make an impact.
This comes as Russian troops remain massed at the Ukrainian border. Now, Russia denies any plans to invade its neighbor, with President Putin accusing the West of failing to respect Moscow's security concerns. Now, for more on the recent crisis and the updates on the same, our correspondent Susan Tehrani now joins us live on this broadcast from New York. Susan, thanks so much for joining us. Now, as we just heard, U.S. President Joe Biden has formally approved additional U.S. military deployments to Eastern Europe, and this was confirmed by the Pentagon, with U.S. troops now being deployed soon to Poland, Germany, and even Romania. Is this a clear escalation in the Ukraine conflict?
According to John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesman, because the United States at this point has no intention of sending troops into Ukraine, and Kirby made it clear that because Ukraine is not a NATO member state, ultimately the United States will not be sending troops into Ukraine. This is to assure NATO allies that the United States does indeed have their backs, and that's the reason that the United States is sending these troops to these European countries, and also for quote-unquote to Russia to take NATO seriously. Now, one of the questions that arises from sending these troops and these comments is whether or not the United States has any form of intelligence, or it thinks that perhaps Russia has any intention of launching an invasion beyond Ukraine's borders. And is that the reason that it decided to send these troops to the Ukrainian to borders outside of Ukraine or not? That was a question that John Kirby said that he does not wish to answer, and he also said that he does not know what Vladimir Putin's intentions are.
Right, Susan, just analyzing the Pentagon briefing that we showed our viewers just a few hours ago. The Pentagon in the press briefing clearly said that it is fully cognizant of Russia's ability to invade Ukraine, and the fact that while the intentions of Russia may be unclear at the moment, but its ability to invade Ukraine is pretty evident for the United States. So what lies ahead in this crisis, especially when it comes to tensions between Russia and the United States?
Several folds to that. Again, once we saw these troop buildups and this authorization by America's Commander-in-Chief Joe Biden on deployment of troops to Eastern Europe, the 3,000 troops, this is in addition to that 8,500 troops that are on standby here in the United States. On the other hand, we heard from Russian President Vladimir Putin during the press conference earlier that he's open to dialogue. Another recent development was a leaked document by El País, a European outlet that basically outlines America's response to Russia's demands. And in that response, you see that America is willing to negotiate on some aspects with Russia, not on its principal demands to not let Ukraine into NATO or stop providing Ukraine with weapons, but on other issues like arms control and perhaps troop deployment around Ukraine and Eastern European states. So that might be a positive development. But I think another aspect that everyone is watching is an important date, and that would be around February 20th. That is the end of the Winter Olympics in Beijing, and that might be a time where Americans are wondering whether or not Vladimir Putin will make his final decision on whether to invade Ukraine or not, because if he hadn't before that, it might have been because he doesn't want to overshadow the Winter Olympics and Xi Jinping's spotlight, if you may.
Absolutely. Susan Teherani, thanks so much for all those inputs, and thanks for joining us from New York at this hour. WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.